Mata Saraswati Sharada Devi. Sharada is another name for Saraswati and means giver of wisdom. I wanted to read from my teacher's book. So Sheridan David's teacher, Sri Brahmananda Saraswati, his book, Fundamentals of Yoga, by Eternal Laws That Never Fail. Suggestion is the most important of these. Suggestion is the underlying and fundamental cause of all natural phenomena, and it is the powerful instrument of samadhi, or enlightenment. The whole universe is nothing but suggestion. The world lives by it. The greatest power of nature is the power of suggestion. It is as old as nature and as powerful as nature. We are constantly moving every moment by our suggestion. First we think, then we do. First we plan, then we accomplish the plan. The newborn baby is not able to walk like a young child. It gives constant suggestion through the mind, and after 1 or 2 years practice of suggestion and of trial, it becomes able to walk. Knowledge, or anything that we know, has come to us through the power of suggestion. In school and in university, we learn through the suggestion of our teachers. All newborn babies are ignorant. During their childhood, teens, and adult life, they develop themselves according to the suggestions that they receive through external and internal surroundings. Through constant suggestion, the same child becomes a master of their subject. Any knowledge that we are acquiring at present, or which we expect to acquire in the future, all come to us through the power of suggestion. Even the knowledge that seems to be spontaneous to you, by the power of suggestion from the primordial creative energy, from universal mind, from universal intelligence, all knowledge was here before you and before this universe was born, and will remain here even after you and the universe is gone. And so will the great power of suggestion. You can see how many times I've read this particular page because it's falling out of my book. So to summarize, everything that we know comes from the patience, generosity, wisdom of teachers, of all kinds of teachers, not just teachers that we see as teachers standing at the front of the classroom, but by parents, by friends, by neighbors. Anyone who has taught us anything is a teacher, right? And even that which we think of as our own original thought, as our own creative thought, came from the fertile ground of everything that we've been taught through the wisdom, generosity, and patience of others. Even the great musicians and artists of the world, their creativity sprung forth from being grounded in their tradition, being grounded in their teachers' teachings, and then that sprung forth a new, thought or a new method, or the Bach created a new way of sort of thinking about the mathematics of music, for example, but it all sprung forth from studying what was given to him. Yeah. So I like to do a version of a blessings meditation where I sort of offer my thanks, my gratitude, my blessings to everyone who has taught me anything. And the way that kind of works is as if you're sitting in contemplation. It's not quite meditation because we're, contemplating different objects, but you sit in meditation, contemplating, And whoever comes to mind, kind of like Sharon's blessing meditation, whoever comes to mind that taught you anything, the person that taught me harmonium, or the multiple people who taught me harmonium, bringing them to mind one at a time. And then the person who taught me how to read, or the multiple people who taught me how to read, the person who taught me to ride my bicycle, the person who taught me how to make cold brew the good way, right? Person who taught me to tie my shoes, the person who taught me to speak more compassionately, the person who taught me yoga, or the multiple people who taught me yoga, right? And that you let that person come up into your mind and you thank them or bless them in some way. And then at the end, you can kind of visualize putting all the faces together, almost like a little inner altar, kind of like the way we would have multiple people depicted, multiple beings and deities and teachers depicted all on an altar. You're creating almost an inner altar. So in this way, that's one way that I like to sort of practice staying in touch with this idea that I am the product. I'm humbly and gratefully the product of everything that I've been taught. And so that's one nice way to stay in touch with that. And if you extrapolate that out, right, even those people were all taught by the generosity, wisdom, and patience of all their teachers, right? And so what can happen is you can bring about this sort of feeling of the interconnectedness of our collective wisdom, right? You can kind of bring to bear this feeling of sort of being connected through time and space to all living beings, past, present, and future. One thing that I sometimes think about in relation to this is the practice of yoga itself, right? Even just take any of the shapes, for example, take Paschimottanasana, right? The Paschimottanasana that you're practicing has been taught to you by people who learned it from another generation of people who learned it from another generation of people, and that wisdom has sort of been passed through the ages. So this Paschimottanasana right now in this moment is actually the product of a whole line of knowledge and people and teachers and students, and this sort of integration of suggestion, of the power of suggestion, right? So that can be an interesting way to practice. Another idea that I take from this is there's that moment where he says, first we think, then we do. So one thing to notice is someone said to me recently, thought is action in rehearsal. Thought is action in rehearsal. And how does that make us sort of rethink our thought? Can we rethink a thought? I think so. I think we can rethink a thought. But in particular, take the way that we practice vinyasa, right? There's sort of this process by which, like, the teacher gives an instruction. That instruction passes through the ear, so we hear the instruction. Then the mind has to process the instruction and think about the action that it wants to do. And then the mind has to coordinate with the rest of the system to create the action. Now, that whole process, we're trying to make that process almost collapse down to take as little time as possible, so that there's a smaller and smaller distance between what I'm hearing, what I'm thinking, like what I'm hearing, my intention to move, and my movement itself. We're trying to make that as streamlined and seamless as possible in order to have that experience of like direct action, right? But nonetheless, there is the thought that precedes the action, even if preceding it only by a nanosecond. And can we observe the ways in which maybe that thought process interrupts the practice or perverts the practice somehow. Like when the teacher calls handstand, right? What's the first thought? Maybe the first thought is, no, I don't want to. Maybe the first thought is, I can't do that and I'll never do it. Maybe the first thought is, I got to go to the bathroom, right? I gotta get out of here. But again, can we create opportunities where we're noticing where the thought interrupts pure action, or where we could sort of rewrite that thought that precedes the action, right? Just like Sri Brahmananda says, first we think, then we do. So can we reshape the thought that precedes the handstand to make it more, and it doesn't even have to be about handstand itself. Like, we don't have to get handstand to get enlightened, right? But can we make a thought that says something like, I'm going to stay present with this experience and I'm going to notice what comes up for me, right? I mean, that's all it's really about. It's not really about the handstand. It's about staying present with what's coming up and then acting accordingly. Yeah. So those are a couple of ways to integrate thought, word, action into practice, and also pranams and respect to all of the teachers of yoga, past, present, and future, and all, Saraswati represents all wisdom, poetry, art, everything that comes to us from that place. She is Shakti herself, and she also, the river, is also representative of the central channel, so of that journey from the root chakra to enlightenment. The whole journey is Saraswati herself, that river carrying us towards enlightenment. So if you stick around, I'll be happy to show you the arrangement that I made for the harmonium. The tune is based on a Nina Rao tune, and I've arranged it just from hearing the tune and making an arrangement. I don't know if it's exactly how she plays it, but it's the arrangement that I made based on her song. So I have an easier version and a more complex version. I'll show the easier version first. Namastasye Mata Saraswati Sharada Devi. Namastasye Mata Saraswati Sharada Devi. Namastasye Sharada Devi. Namastasye Sharada Devi. Namastasye Sharada Devi. Namastasye Sharada Devi. And now I'll show the little bit more intricate version. Namastasye Mata Saraswati Sharada Devi. Namastasye Mata Saraswati Sharada Devi. Namastasye Sharada Devi. Namastasye